Millionaire disguises as a janitor to test his staff. Before we dive into this heartwarming story, I'd love to know, have you ever witnessed someone being treated differently based on their job or appearance? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to tell us where in the world you're watching from today. The elevator doors opened to reveal a scene that would haunt Jonathan Pierce for weeks to come. His own executives were laughing as they dumped coffee grounds directly onto the freshly mopped floor, making crude jokes about giving the janitor something to do. What made it worse was watching them pocket office supplies, expensive pens, and even petty cash from the reception desk while treating the cleaning staff like they were invisible. Jonathan adjusted his worn work uniform and pushed his cleaning cart forward, his heart pounding with a mixture of rage and disbelief. 3 months ago he had been Jonathan Pierce, CEO of Pierce Industries, worth over $50 million. Today he was simply John, a middle-aged African-American man in coveralls, trying to understand why his company's employee satisfaction ratings had plummeted and why theft reports were increasing monthly. The idea had seemed brilliant in his executive suite. Go undercover, see how employees really behaved, identify the problems and fix them. But standing here, watching his own vice president laugh while deliberately kicking over a trash can, Jonathan realized he had entered a world far more cruel than he had ever imagined. "Hey, you missed a spot," called out Brad Thompson, the marketing director, pointing to an area of the floor that was already spotless. "What do we even pay you people for?" Jonathan gritted his teeth and moved toward the spot, his hands trembling slightly as he wrung out the mop. In his real life, Brad made 1/10 of what Jonathan earned in a single day. Yet here Brad treated him like he was less than human. "Good morning, John," came a gentle voice from behind him. Jonathan turned to see Melody Washington, the receptionist, offering him a warm smile. She was a beautiful African-American woman in her late 20s, with natural hair pulled back in a professional bun and eyes that seemed to radiate genuine kindness. "Morning, Miss Washington," Jonathan replied, surprised by the respectful greeting. In 3 weeks of working here, Melody was the only person who had bothered to learn his name. "I brought extra coffee today," she said, holding up a steaming cup. "Would you like some? It's cold in here this morning." Jonathan stared at the cup, then at her face. No one had offered him anything since he started this job. "That's very kind of you, but I don't want to take your coffee." "Please," Melody insisted, pressing the cup into his hands. "I made too much and it'll just go to waste. Besides, everyone deserves a good cup of coffee to start their day." As Jonathan accepted the coffee, he noticed Brad rolling his eyes. "Melody, you don't need to encourage the help. They have their own break room." Melody's expression shifted slightly, her smile becoming more forced. "John works just as hard as any of us, Brad. Maybe harder." "Whatever," Brad muttered, walking away with his group of executives. Jonathan sipped the coffee, surprised by how much this simple gesture meant to him. "Thank you, Miss Washington. This is really good." "Please just call me Melody," she said, her genuine smile returning. "And you're welcome. I believe in treating everyone the way I'd want to be treated." As Jonathan continued his cleaning rounds, he couldn't shake the image of Melody's kindness contrasted against his executive's cruelty. He had built this company from nothing, working 18-hour days, sacrificing relationships and personal happiness to create something meaningful. Seeing it reduced to this toxic environment where good people like Melody were surrounded by corruption and callousness made him question everything he thought he knew about leadership. The morning progressed with more of the same. Jonathan witnessed expense report fraud, saw employees taking extended lunch breaks while lying about their hours, and overheard conversations about selling company information to competitors. Each discovery felt like a knife to his heart, but what hurt more was seeing how these same people treated the support staff. When lunchtime arrived, Jonathan sat alone in the janitor's closet, eating a sandwich he had packed from home. The isolation was crushing. In his real life he was surrounded by people seeking his attention, his approval, his money. Here he was invisible, forgotten, dismissed as unworthy of basic human dignity. A soft knock on the door interrupted his thoughts. "John? Are you in there?" "Yes, come in," Jonathan called, quickly wiping his eyes. Melody peeked her head in, holding a small container. "I brought you some homemade cookies. My grandmother's recipe." Jonathan looked at the container, then at her face. "Why are you being so nice to me?" The question seemed to surprise her. "Why wouldn't I be nice to you? You're a human being, John. You work hard, you're polite, and you deserve to be treated with respect." "But I'm just the janitor," Jonathan said, testing her response. Melody's eyes flashed with something that looked like anger, but not at him. "Just the janitor? John, you keep this place running. You make sure we have a clean, safe environment to work in. Without you, this company would fall apart in a week. Don't ever think you're just anything." Jonathan felt tears forming in his eyes. When was the last time someone had spoken to him like this? When had anyone seen value in him beyond his money or his title? "I'm sorry," Melody said, noticing his emotional response. "I didn't mean to upset you. I just hate seeing good people being treated badly." "You didn't upset me," Jonathan managed to say. "You just reminded me that there are still good people in the world." Melody smiled and placed the cookies on the small table beside him. "Eat those during your break. And John, if anyone gives you trouble, you let me know. I don't care who they are or what position they hold. Nobody deserves to be treated with disrespect." After she left, Jonathan sat in the quiet closet, staring at the homemade cookies. In his executive suite, he received expensive gifts, elaborate dinners, and extravagant presentations designed to win his favor. But these simple cookies, given from genuine kindness, meant more to him than any of those costly gestures. As the afternoon wore on, Jonathan continued his observations. He saw junior employees staying late to cover for their supervisors who left early. He watched security guards ignore obvious theft because they were afraid of confronting higher-ups. He witnessed meeting after meeting where good ideas were dismissed simply because they came from lower-level employees. But through it all, he kept thinking about Melody. Her kindness wasn't calculated or strategic. She didn't know he was rich or powerful. She treated him well simply because she believed it was right. In a world where everyone wanted something from him, she asked for nothing and gave everything. As his shift ended, Jonathan realized that his undercover mission had already revealed more than he had bargained for. He had come here to identify problems with his company, but instead, he had discovered something much more valuable. He had found someone who could see worth in a person regardless of their position or status. Walking to his car, Jonathan couldn't help but smile despite the day's harsh realities. Tomorrow he would return as John the janitor, but tonight he would plan how to fix his company and hopefully find a way to deserve the kindness of someone as genuine as Melody Washington. The deception was becoming more complicated than he had anticipated, but for the first time in years, Jonathan Pierce felt like he was exactly where he needed to be. The next morning, Jonathan arrived at Pierce Industries with a heavy heart and a clear mission. He had spent the previous evening reviewing security footage from his office, confirming the theft and misconduct he had witnessed firsthand. The evidence was overwhelming, but what troubled him most was how systematic the cruelty toward support staff had become. As he pushed his cleaning cart through the main lobby, Jonathan noticed Melody arranging fresh flowers at the reception desk. She looked up as he approached, her face lighting up with genuine pleasure. "Good morning, John. How did you like the cookies?" "They were delicious," Jonathan replied, surprised by how much he looked forward to these simple interactions. "Best cookies I've had in years." "I'm so glad. My grandmother would be proud. She always said the secret ingredient was love." Melody's laugh was musical, infectious. "I know that sounds silly, but I really believe it makes a difference." Jonathan found himself smiling, a real smile that felt foreign after months of corporate meetings and strategic discussions. "It doesn't sound silly at all. I think you're right." As they talked, Jonathan noticed how Melody's presence seemed to brighten the entire lobby. Other employees gravitated toward her desk, not just for work purposes but for her warmth and encouragement. She remembered personal details about everyone, asking about sick family members, congratulating people on achievements, and offering support during difficult times. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Melody called to an older Hispanic woman pushing a housekeeping cart. "How is your son doing with his college applications?" "Oh, Melody, thank you for asking." Mrs. Rodriguez's face beamed. "He got accepted to State University. The scholarship letter came yesterday." "That's wonderful. I'm so proud of him, and I know you must be bursting with joy." Melody's excitement seemed completely genuine. "You raised such a smart, hard-working young man." Jonathan watched this interaction with growing amazement. Mrs. Rodriguez was part of the custodial staff like him, yet Melody treated her with the same respect and interest she showed everyone else. It was a stark contrast to how the executives behaved. "John, have you met Mrs. Rodriguez?" Melody asked, drawing him into the conversation. "She's been keeping this building spotless for 8 years. Carmen, this is John, our new janitor." "Nice to meet you," Mrs. Rodriguez said warmly. "We have to look out for each other in this job." "Absolutely," Jonathan agreed, shaking her hand. "I'm still learning the ropes. Don't worry, you'll do fine. And if you need anything, just ask. We're a team down here, even if some people forget that." As Mrs. Rodriguez continued her rounds, Jonathan realized he had just experienced something he had never encountered in his executive life. Genuine community. These people, dismissed and overlooked by management, had created their own support network based on mutual respect and shared experiences. "Melody," came a sharp voice from across the lobby. Brad Thompson was approaching, looking annoyed. "I need you to cancel my 2 o'clock meeting and reschedule it for tomorrow. Something more important came up." "Of course, Mr. Thompson," Melody replied professionally. "Should I let the other attendees know the reason for the change?" "Just tell them it's been moved. They don't need details." Brad's tone was dismissive, treating Melody like she was merely an extension of his computer rather than a person. "I'll take care of it right away," Melody said, maintaining her professional demeanor despite the rudeness. As Brad walked away, Jonathan noticed Melody's shoulders slump slightly. The constant dismissiveness was wearing on her, though she tried not to show it. "Some people forget their manners," Jonathan said quietly, wanting to offer support. "It's okay," Melody replied, though her smile was less bright than before. "Everyone has stressful days. I just try to remember that how people treat others says more about them than it does about the people they're treating." Jonathan was struck by her wisdom and grace. Even when faced with rudeness, she chose to respond with understanding rather than bitterness. It was a quality he realized he had lost somewhere along his climb to success. The morning continued with more observations. Jonathan watched as employees treated him like furniture, walking around him, talking about him as if he weren't there, and showing no consideration for his work. He mopped floors only to have someone immediately track mud across them without apology. He emptied trash cans while people continued throwing things in them, sometimes missing and leaving him to clean up their mess. But punctuating these moments of disrespect were small kindnesses from Melody. She brought him a fresh cup of coffee when she saw his had grown cold. She warned him when executives were coming through so he could avoid confrontations. She even helped him move a heavy filing cabinet, rolling up her sleeves without hesitation. "You don't have to help me with this," Jonathan protested as she grabbed one end of the cabinet. "Of course I do," Melody replied matter-of-factly. "This is too heavy for one person, and I'm not going to watch you struggle when I can help." As they maneuvered the cabinet into place, Jonathan found himself studying her face. There was something beautiful about her determination, her willingness to help without expecting anything in return. In his world, every favor came with strings attached, every kindness had a price. But Melody seemed to operate from a different set of principles entirely. "There," she said, brushing dust from her hands. "Teamwork makes everything easier." "Thank you," Jonathan said, meaning it more than she could know. "I owe you one." "You don't owe me anything, John. We're colleagues and colleagues help each other out." During lunch, Jonathan found himself sitting in the employee break room for the first time instead of hiding in the janitor's closet. Melody had invited him to join her and a few other support staff members, and he was curious about their perspective on the company. "The benefits used to be better," complained Frank, a security guard. "They cut our health insurance last year but somehow found money for executive bonuses." "At least you still have a job," added Lisa, a data entry clerk. "They laid off 3 people in accounting last month and gave their work to the rest of us." "It's frustrating," Melody agreed. "This company makes millions of dollars, but they treat employees like expenses to be minimized rather than assets to be valued." Jonathan listened to these conversations with growing discomfort. He had approved those budget cuts, signed off on those layoffs, justified those decisions as necessary for maintaining profitability. But hearing the human cost of his choices made him realize how disconnected he had become from the real impact of his decisions. "What about you, John?" Melody asked. "Where did you work before here?" Jonathan had prepared for this question, but sitting in this circle of genuine people made lying feel more difficult. "I worked for a big corporation for many years. Management there was similar to here." "It's sad how common it is," Melody said. "But I still believe things can change. It just takes people who are willing to stand up for what's right." "Do you really think one person can make a difference?" Jonathan asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. "I have to believe it," Melody replied. "Otherwise, what's the point of trying to do good? Every small act of kindness ripples outward. Every time we treat someone with respect, we make the world a little better." As the afternoon progressed, Jonathan found himself looking for excuses to work near Melody's desk. He was fascinated by how she handled difficult situations with grace, how she managed to maintain her optimism despite the challenging environment, and how she consistently chose kindness over cynicism. When a delivery person arrived with a heavy package, Melody immediately offered to help him carry it. When an elderly client seemed confused about directions, she personally walked him to his destination. When a coworker spilled coffee on important documents, she spent her break helping to remake the copies. "You're always helping people," Jonathan observed during one of these incidents. "My mama always told me that we're all just walking each other home," Melody replied. "Life is hard enough without making it harder for each other." As his shift ended, Jonathan realized that his second day undercover had revealed something unexpected. He had come to investigate his company's problems, but instead, he had discovered what his company could become. Melody's approach to life, her genuine care for others, and her unwavering optimism showed him a different way of leading and living. Walking to his car, Jonathan couldn't stop thinking about her words. "We're all just walking each other home." It was such a simple concept, but it challenged everything he thought he knew about business and success. Maybe making money wasn't the only measure of achievement. Maybe treating people well was just as important as profit margins. For the first time in his career, Jonathan Pierce found himself wanting to be a better person, not just a more successful businessman. And it was all because of a receptionist who saw value in everyone, including a janitor she had no reason to treat with kindness. By his third week as John the janitor, Jonathan had settled into a routine that felt both foreign and oddly comforting. He woke up before dawn, put on his work clothes, and spent his days seeing his company through completely different eyes. But what he looked forward to most was his daily interactions with Melody, which had become the bright spot in his otherwise challenging undercover mission. It was a rainy Thursday morning when Melody approached him with an invitation that would change everything. "John, I hope this doesn't sound forward, but would you like to grab coffee after work today? There's this little place down the street that makes the best coffee in the city, and I could use some company." Jonathan's heart skipped a beat. In his real life, he was constantly surrounded by people seeking his attention, but those relationships felt calculated and hollow. This invitation felt genuine, and that both thrilled and terrified him. "I'd like that very much," he replied, trying to keep his voice steady. "What time?" "How about 6? I know we both get off at 5:30, so that gives us time to change if we want." Melody's smile was warm but slightly nervous, as if she was unsure whether she was overstepping boundaries. "6 is perfect," Jonathan said, already wondering what he would wear. His undercover wardrobe consisted mainly of work clothes and a few casual outfits designed to maintain his janitor persona. The rest of the day passed in a blur of anticipation and anxiety. Jonathan found himself cleaning the same areas twice, his mind distracted by the upcoming coffee date. He reminded himself that this was just a friendly invitation between colleagues, but his heart had other ideas. At 6 o'clock sharp, Jonathan arrived at the coffee shop to find Melody already there, sitting by the window in a simple but elegant yellow dress that made her skin glow. She had let her hair down, and Jonathan realized he had never seen her looking so relaxed and beautiful. "You look nice," he said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Thank you. It feels good to be out of my work clothes." Melody gestured to the menu. "I already ordered us both the house blend. I hope that's okay." "Perfect," Jonathan replied, though he honestly would have been happy with instant coffee as long as he was sharing it with her. The coffee shop was small and cozy, with mismatched furniture and local artwork covering the walls. It was the kind of place Jonathan would never have noticed in his former life, but sitting here with Melody, he found its imperfections charming. "I have to admit," Melody said, stirring sugar into her coffee, "I was a little nervous about asking you. I wasn't sure if you'd want to spend time with me outside of work." "Why would you be nervous?" Jonathan asked, genuinely puzzled. "Well, we don't really know each other that well, and I didn't want you to think I was being too forward or anything." Melody's cheeks flushed slightly. "I just enjoy talking with you, and I thought it would be nice to have a real conversation without interruptions." Jonathan felt a warmth spread through his chest. "I'm glad you asked. I enjoy talking with you too." As they settled into conversation, Jonathan discovered that Melody was even more remarkable than he had realized. She spoke passionately about her dreams of returning to school to study social work, her love of reading, and her close relationship with her family. "I've been saving money to go back to college," she explained. "I want to help people who are going through tough times. I know it sounds idealistic, but I really believe everyone deserves someone in their corner." "That doesn't sound idealistic at all," Jonathan said. "It sounds like you want to make a real difference in the world." "What about you, John? What are your dreams?" Melody asked, leaning forward with genuine interest. Jonathan paused, realizing he hadn't thought about his actual dreams in years. His life had become so focused on business goals and financial targets that he had forgotten what he truly wanted. I used to dream about building something meaningful, he said slowly. Something that would help people and make the world better. But somewhere along the way I got caught up in other things. It's never too late to get back to those dreams, Melody said gently. Sometimes life takes us on detours, but we can always find our way back to what matters. As they talked, Jonathan learned about Melody's background. She had grown up in a working-class family, the daughter of a nurse and a mechanic. Her parents had instilled in her the values of hard work, kindness, and perseverance. She had worked her way through community college while caring for her aging grandmother, and she had been supporting her family financially since she was 21. My mama got sick last year, Melody said, her voice becoming softer. Cancer. She's doing better now, but the medical bills were overwhelming. That's why I had to put my education plans on hold. Jonathan felt his heart clench. I'm so sorry. That must have been terrifying. It was, Melody admitted. But it also taught me what's really important. Money and success are nice, but they don't mean anything if you don't have people to share them with. Family, friends, relationships, that's what makes life worth living. Jonathan thought about his own life, his empty mansion, his surface-level relationships, his constant focus on profits and achievements. When was the last time he had prioritized relationships over revenue? You're very wise, he said quietly. I don't know about wise, Melody laughed. I just try to learn from my experiences. What about your family, John? Are you close to them? Jonathan felt a pang of sadness. I don't have much family left. My parents passed away several years ago and I never had siblings. I guess I threw myself into work to fill that emptiness. I'm sorry for your loss, Melody said, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. But you know, family isn't just about blood. We can create our own families with the people we care about. The simple touch of her hand sent electricity through Jonathan's body. He looked down at their joined hands, marveling at how natural it felt. Tell me about your mother, he said, wanting to know more about the woman who had raised someone as special as Melody. Melody's face lit up as she talked about her mother, Rosa Washington. She was a retired nurse who had dedicated her life to helping others, often working double shifts to support her family. Despite her illness, she remained positive and continued to volunteer at local community centers. She's my hero, Melody said simply. She taught me that true strength comes from lifting others up, not from putting them down. I'd like to meet her someday, Jonathan said, then immediately worried that he was being too forward. I'd like that too, Melody replied, her smile brightening. She would love you. She always says you can judge a person's character by how they treat people who can't do anything for them. Jonathan felt a chill run down his spine. If only Melody knew the truth about who he was and how he had been living his life. As the evening progressed, they covered topics ranging from books to movies to their favorite foods. Jonathan discovered that Melody was incredibly well-read despite never having finished college, and her insights into human nature were profound and thoughtful. I think people are basically good, she said during a discussion about human nature. Even when they act badly, it's usually because they're hurting or scared or have forgotten their own worth. If we can remember that everyone is fighting a battle we don't know about, it's easier to respond with compassion. Even when they're cruel or selfish? Jonathan asked, thinking about his executives. Especially then, Melody replied. Hurt people, but love people. If we can show someone genuine kindness, it might be the first time they've experienced it in a long time. As they prepared to leave, Jonathan realized he didn't want the evening to end. He had learned more about life and humanity in 3 hours with Melody than he had in years of business meetings and corporate events. Thank you for tonight, he said as they stood outside the coffee shop. This has been wonderful. Thank you for saying yes, Melody replied. I wasn't sure you would. Why wouldn't I? Jonathan asked. I don't know. I guess I'm used to people being too busy or too important to spend time with someone like me. Jonathan felt a sharp pain in his chest. Someone like you? Melody, you're the most genuine, intelligent, caring person I've met in years. Anyone would be lucky to spend time with you. Melody's eyes widened slightly at the intensity in his voice. That's very kind of you to say. I'm not being kind. I'm being honest. Jonathan paused, then added, Would you like to do this again sometime? I'd love to, Melody said, her smile radiant. As they parted ways, Jonathan watched Melody walk to her car, feeling a mixture of joy and guilt. He was falling for her, but their entire relationship was built on a lie. How could he tell her the truth without losing her? And how could he continue deceiving someone who had shown him such genuine care and trust? Driving home to his empty mansion, Jonathan realized that his undercover mission had become something far more complicated than he had ever imagined. He had come to investigate his company, but instead, he had discovered what his life had been missing all along. The question was, what was he going to do about it? The following Monday brought revelations that shook Jonathan to his core. As he arrived for his janitor shift, he overheard Brad Thompson on a phone call that made his blood run cold. "Yeah, I've got the client information ready to sell," Brad was saying into his phone, glancing around to make sure no one was listening. "The Peterson account details, their bidding strategies, everything. My contact at Hartwell Industries will pay top dollar for this." Jonathan pretended to focus on organizing his cleaning supplies while listening to every word. Hartwell Industries was Pierce Industries' biggest competitor, and the Peterson account was worth over $2 million annually. Brad was literally selling company secrets to their rivals. "Just transfer the money to the offshore account like last time," Brad continued. "And make sure it can't be traced back to me." Jonathan's hands shook as he realized the scope of the corruption. This wasn't just office supply theft or expense account fraud. This was corporate espionage that could destroy his company's competitive advantage and cost hundreds of jobs. As Brad ended his call, Jonathan pushed his cart toward the elevator, his mind racing. He needed evidence, but he also needed to be careful not to blow his cover. If Brad suspected anything, he would destroy all traces of his activities. "Morning, John," came Melody's cheerful voice as the elevator doors opened. "You look troubled. Everything okay?" Jonathan forced a smile, not wanting to involve her in the dangerous situation he had uncovered. "Just tired. Late night." "Well, I have something that might cheer you up," Melody said, holding up a small container. "I made banana bread yesterday and I brought some for you." Despite his stress, Jonathan felt his heart warm at her thoughtfulness. "You didn't have to do that." "I know, but I wanted to. Besides, my grandmother's recipe makes enough to feed an army, and I can't eat it all myself." Melody's smile was infectious. "Plus, I figured you might need some energy for all that hard work you do." As they walked together toward the reception area, Jonathan noticed how Melody greeted everyone with the same warmth she showed him. She asked the security guard about his daughter's graduation, congratulated a maintenance worker on his anniversary, and offered encouragement to a junior accountant who looked stressed. "Melody," Jonathan said as they reached her desk, "can I ask you something?" "Of course." "Do you ever notice anything unusual about the executives here? Anything that seems wrong or suspicious?" Melody's expression grew thoughtful. "That's an interesting question. Why do you ask?" Jonathan chose his words carefully. "I just notice things when I'm cleaning. People don't always pay attention to who's around when they're talking." "You're right about that," Melody said, lowering her voice. "I've heard some concerning conversations lately. Things about clients, about money, about deals that don't sound quite right." "What kind of things?" Jonathan asked, trying to keep his tone casual. "Well, I shouldn't gossip, but..." Melody looked around to make sure no one was listening. "Last week, I heard Mr. Thompson talking about moving money to different accounts. And Mr. Phillips in accounting has been asking me to process payments to companies I've never heard of." Jonathan's pulse quickened. "Do you remember the names of these companies?" "Some of them. Island Holdings, Sunset Enterprises, Blue Sky Consulting. They all sound fake to me, but I'm just the receptionist. I figured someone higher up knew what they were doing." Jonathan recognized these names from his executive briefings. They were shell companies that had been receiving payments for consulting services that he had never authorized. The corruption was even more widespread than he had imagined. "Melody, those observations are more important than you realize," Jonathan said carefully. "Have you ever thought about reporting these concerns to someone?" "To who?" "The people I'd report to are the ones having the suspicious conversations," Melody replied with a bitter laugh. "Besides, who would believe the receptionist over the vice president?" Jonathan felt a surge of anger at the system that had made someone as insightful as Melody feel powerless. "Your observations matter. Don't let anyone make you think otherwise." "Thank you for saying that," Melody said, touching his arm gently. "It means a lot coming from you." As the day progressed, Jonathan found himself in the perfect position to gather evidence. His janitor status made him invisible to the executives, allowing him to overhear conversations and observe activities that they would never discuss in front of someone they perceived as important. He discovered that the corruption involved at least 6 senior executives and had been going on for over a year. They were embezzling money through fake consulting contracts, selling client information to competitors, and manipulating expense reports to hide their tracks. During his lunch break, Jonathan sat in his car and called his personal attorney on his encrypted phone. "Richard, I need you to prepare documentation for a major internal investigation and potential criminal charges," he said without preamble. "Jonathan? I thought you were on vacation. What's going on?" "I can't explain everything now, but I need you to work with the FBI's white-collar crime unit. I have evidence of large-scale embezzlement and corporate espionage within my own company." "Are you sure about this? These are serious accusations." "I'm sure. I've been gathering evidence for weeks and it's worse than I imagined. I need you to set up a meeting with federal investigators for next week." "I'll handle it. But Jonathan, be careful. If these people are as corrupt as you say, they might be dangerous if they discover what you're doing." After ending the call, Jonathan sat in his car feeling the weight of his discoveries. He had uncovered a criminal conspiracy that threatened everything he had built, but he also realized that his undercover work had shown him something equally important. The good people in his company, like Melody, were being taken advantage of by the corrupt executives. When he returned to work, Jonathan found Melody looking upset at her desk. She was staring at her computer screen with a frown, and he could see the stress in her shoulders. "Everything all right?" he asked, approaching her desk with his cleaning cart. "Oh, John," Melody sighed. "I'm probably overreacting, but something strange just happened. Mr. Thompson asked me to delete some emails from the server. He said they were old and taking up space, but when I looked at them they seemed important. Client contracts, financial agreements, that sort of thing." Jonathan's blood ran cold. Brad was trying to destroy evidence. "Did you delete them?" "Not yet. Something about it felt wrong, so I told him I'd handle it later. But now I'm worried I'll get in trouble for not following orders." Melody rubbed her temples. "I hate feeling like I'm caught between doing what's right and keeping my job." "Trust your instincts," Jonathan said firmly. "If something feels wrong, it probably is. But what if I'm wrong? What if I'm just being paranoid?" Melody's voice was filled with doubt. "You're not paranoid. You're observant and intelligent, and those are good qualities, not flaws." Jonathan looked directly into her eyes. "Don't delete those emails." "Not yet." "But what if Mr. Thompson gets angry?" "Let me worry about that," Jonathan said, though he couldn't explain why a janitor would be able to protect her from a vice president's anger. That afternoon, Jonathan witnessed more disturbing behavior. He saw Phillips from accounting shredding documents in his office, and he overheard a conversation between two executives about cleaning up loose ends before the quarterly audit. The situation was becoming urgent. These people were actively destroying evidence, and Jonathan realized he needed to act quickly to preserve what was left. During his cleaning rounds, he managed to photograph several documents that had been carelessly left on desks. He also discovered that Brad had been using his company computer to access Hartwell Industries servers, leaving digital footprints that could be traced. As the day ended, Jonathan found himself more determined than ever to expose the corruption. But he also found himself thinking about Melody and how this would affect her. She was an innocent person caught in the middle of a criminal conspiracy, and he felt responsible for protecting her. "John, wait up," Melody called as he was leaving the building. He turned to find her hurrying toward him, her purse slung over her shoulder and her car keys in her hand. "I wanted to thank you for earlier," she said, "for telling me to trust my instincts. I've been thinking about what you said and you're right. I know the difference between normal business and something that feels wrong." "I'm glad you're listening to yourself," Jonathan replied. "Your instincts are good, Melody. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise." "There's something else," she said, glancing around to make sure they were alone. "I've been keeping copies of some of the strange requests I've been getting. Nothing official, just notes I made for myself. I thought maybe someday they might be important." Jonathan's heart raced. "What kind of notes? Dates, times, names of companies, amounts of money?" "I know it sounds paranoid, but my grandmother always told me to keep records of anything that doesn't seem right." Melody bit her lip nervously. "Do you think I'm crazy?" "I think you're brilliant," Jonathan said with complete honesty. "Those records could be very important." "Really? But important to who?" Jonathan paused, knowing he couldn't reveal the truth about his identity. "There are people who investigate corporate wrongdoing. Someday your records might help them." "I never thought about it that way," Melody said. "I just felt like I should document things, in case someone ever asked questions." "Keep those records safe," Jonathan advised. "And keep making notes. You might be helping more people than you realize." As they walked to their cars, Jonathan felt a mixture of admiration and protectiveness toward Melody. She had instinctively been doing exactly what a good employee should do when faced with suspicious activity, but she had no idea how valuable her actions were. "John," Melody said as they reached her car, "would you like to have dinner sometime? I mean, if you're not too busy or anything." Jonathan's heart leaped. "I'd love to." "Great. How about Saturday? I know this little Italian place that's not too expensive but has amazing food." "Saturday sounds perfect," Jonathan said, already planning how he could extend his undercover work through the weekend. As Melody drove away, Jonathan stood in the parking lot thinking about the complexity of his situation. He was falling in love with a woman who didn't know his real identity, while simultaneously uncovering a criminal conspiracy that threatened both their futures. The evidence he had gathered was damning, but he knew he needed more to ensure convictions. More importantly, he needed to figure out how to protect Melody and the other honest employees when the investigation became public. Driving home, Jonathan realized that his undercover mission had become about much more than catching thieves. It had become about preserving the integrity of his company and protecting the people who deserved better than the corrupt leadership they had been enduring. But first, he had to decide how much longer he could maintain his deception, especially with someone who was beginning to mean everything to him. Saturday evening found Jonathan standing outside Marcello's Italian restaurant, nervously adjusting his casual shirt and wondering if he was making a terrible mistake. He had spent the entire day debating whether to continue his deception or find a way to tell Melody the truth about who he really was. The restaurant was exactly the kind of place Melody would choose: warm, unpretentious, with checkered tablecloths and the smell of garlic bread wafting from the kitchen. It was a far cry from the expensive establishments where Jonathan usually conducted business dinners, but somehow it felt more real, more genuine. "John?" Melody's voice called from behind him. He turned to see her approaching in a simple blue dress that made her look absolutely radiant. "I hope you weren't waiting long." "Just got here," Jonathan replied, opening the door for her. "This place smells amazing." "Wait until you taste the food," Melody said, her eyes sparkling with excitement. "My family has been coming here for years. Mrs. Marcello still remembers my order from when I was little." As they were seated at a corner table, Jonathan noticed how Melody greeted the waitress by name and asked about her family. Even in her personal life, she extended the same warmth and genuine interest in others that he had observed at work. "So, John," Melody said once they had ordered, "tell me something about yourself that I don't know. What do you do for fun when you're not working?" Jonathan paused, realizing how little he actually did for enjoyment anymore. His life had become consumed with work, meetings, and financial reports. "I used to read a lot," he said finally. "Business books mostly, but also some history and philosophy." "Used to? Why did you stop?" "I guess I got too busy." "What about you? What do you do when you're not at work?" "I volunteer at the community center on weekends, teaching literacy classes to adults who never learned to read properly," Melody said. "It's incredibly rewarding. There's something magical about watching someone read their first complete sentence or write their first letter to a family member." Jonathan felt a familiar warmth spreading through his chest. Of course she would spend her free time helping others. "That sounds wonderful. How did you get involved with that?" "My grandmother couldn't read," Melody explained. "She was brilliant, but she never had the opportunity to go to school. She always said education was the key to freedom, so when she passed away, I started volunteering as a way to honor her memory." "She sounds like she was a remarkable woman." "She was. She raised me when my parents were working multiple jobs to make ends meet. She taught me that wealth isn't about money, it's about how many people you can help and how much love you can give." Melody's voice grew soft with memory. "She used to say that the richest people are often the poorest in spirit, and the poorest people are often the richest in heart." Jonathan nearly choked on his wine. Melody's grandmother's words hit him like a physical blow, forcing him to confront the emptiness of his own existence. He had millions of dollars but no real relationships. He had power but no real purpose beyond accumulating more wealth. "Are you okay?" Melody asked, noticing his distress. "Yes, sorry. Just thinking about what you said. Your grandmother sounds wise." She was. She also had a gift for seeing through people's facades. She could tell immediately if someone was genuine or just pretending. Melody smiled. "She would have loved you, John. She always said the measure of a person is how they treat others when they have nothing to gain from it." Jonathan felt the weight of his deception growing heavier. Here was someone who valued authenticity above all else, and he was lying to her about his most fundamental identity. "Melody," he said carefully, "what would you do if you discovered that someone you cared about had been lying to you? Not to hurt you, but because they were afraid of how you'd react to the truth. Melody considered this thoughtfully. I think it would depend on the lie and the reason behind it. If someone lied to protect themselves at my expense, that would be hard to forgive. But if someone lied because they were scared or because they thought it would protect me somehow, I think I'd try to understand their motivation. And if the truth was complicated? If revealing it might change everything? John, are you trying to tell me something? Melody's voice was gentle but direct. Jonathan's heart raced. This was his opportunity to come clean, to start their relationship on an honest foundation. But looking at her trusting face, he couldn't find the courage. What if she felt betrayed? What if she could never trust him again? I just believe in honesty, he said finally. And sometimes that's more complicated than it seems. I agree, Melody said, reaching across the table to touch his hand. But I also believe that good people sometimes make mistakes or find themselves in impossible situations. The important thing is their heart and their intentions. As dinner continued, Jonathan found himself sharing more honestly than he had in years. He told her about his loneliness, his regrets about missed opportunities, and his growing realization that success without meaningful relationships was hollow. You know, Melody said as they shared a piece of tiramisu, I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about honesty being complicated. I think sometimes we hide parts of ourselves because we're afraid people won't accept us if they know the whole truth. Do you ever do that? Jonathan asked. More than I'd like to admit, Melody confessed. I mean, I try to be authentic, but there are parts of my life that I don't share with most people. Like how scared I am about my mother's health, or how worried I am about money, or how sometimes I feel like I'm not smart enough because I never finished college. Melody, you're one of the most intelligent people I've ever met, Jonathan said emphatically. Intelligence isn't about degrees or credentials. It's about wisdom, empathy, and the ability to understand what really matters in life. Thank you for saying that, Melody said, her eyes glistening. Sometimes I feel like I'm just pretending to be capable, you know? Like everyone else has figured out some secret to life that I'm missing. I think you've figured out more than most people, Jonathan said. You understand that life is about connections, about helping others, about being kind. That's not common knowledge, it's wisdom. As they prepared to leave the restaurant, Jonathan realized that this evening had been more honest and meaningful than any interaction he'd had in years. Despite his deception about his identity, he had been more genuine with Melody than he had been with anyone in his executive life. John, Melody said as they walked to their cars, I want to ask you something and please don't feel obligated to say yes. What is it? My mother has been asking to meet you. I've told her about our friendship, and she's curious about the man who's been so kind to her daughter. Melody paused nervously. Would you like to come to Sunday dinner tomorrow? It's nothing fancy, just family time. Jonathan felt his heart skip a beat. Meeting Melody's mother felt like a significant step, one that would deepen his emotional investment in a relationship built on deception. But he also couldn't bring himself to say no. I'd be honored, he said. What should I bring? Just yourself, Melody said, her smile radiant. My mother is going to love you. As they said goodnight, Jonathan watched Melody drive away with a mixture of joy and dread. He was being welcomed into her family, but he was still lying about who he was. The deeper he got into this relationship, the more painful the eventual truth would be. But for the first time in years, Jonathan felt like he was living authentically, even if his identity was false. Melody brought out the best in him, the person he had always wanted to be but had lost somewhere along the way to success. The question was, could he find the courage to be honest with her before it was too late? Sunday afternoon found Jonathan standing on the front porch of a modest brick house in a working-class neighborhood, holding a bouquet of flowers and feeling more nervous than he had before any business presentation. Through the window, he could see Melody setting the table while an older woman with graying hair and kind eyes watched approvingly. You must be John, the older woman said as she opened the door. I'm Rosa Washington, Melody's mother. Welcome to our home. Thank you for having me, Mrs. Washington, Jonathan replied, offering her the flowers. Melody speaks about you constantly. Please call me Rosa. And these are beautiful, thank you. Rosa's smile was warm but assessing, and Jonathan could see where Melody had inherited her ability to see through people. Come in, come in. Melody's told me so much about you. The house was small but immaculately clean, filled with family photos and the warm smell of home cooking. Jonathan noticed that despite their modest means, everything was maintained with care and pride. Mama, don't interrogate him before he even gets through the door, Melody called from the kitchen, appearing with a dish towel in her hands. Hi, John. I'm so glad you came. I wouldn't have missed it, Jonathan said, and he meant it. There was something about this simple family gathering that felt more valuable than any of the elaborate social events he usually attended. Over dinner, Jonathan found himself relaxing in a way he hadn't in years. Rosa Washington was a natural storyteller, regaling him with tales of Melody's childhood while Melody protested with good-natured embarrassment. She was always bringing home strays, Rosa said, passing Jonathan a second helping of her famous pot roast. Lost dogs, injured birds, kids from school who needed a friend. I used to joke that our house was a halfway house for anyone who needed help. Mama, you're exaggerating, Melody said, but her smile showed she wasn't really embarrassed. Am I? What about that time you were 10 and you brought home Tommy Peterson because his parents were fighting? That boy stayed here for 3 days before his family sorted things out. Someone had to help him, Melody said simply. He was scared and alone. Jonathan listened to these stories with growing understanding. Melody's compassion wasn't something she had developed as an adult, it was fundamental to who she was, instilled by a mother who had raised her to see beyond herself. What about you, John? Rosa asked. Tell me about your family. Jonathan felt the familiar pang of sadness. I lost my parents several years ago. No siblings. It's just me now. I'm sorry for your loss, Rosa said gently. But you know, family isn't just about blood. Sometimes the most important family members are the ones we choose. That's what Melody said, Jonathan replied, glancing at Melody, who smiled encouragingly. Smart girl, Rosa said with pride. She gets that from her grandmother. That woman could see the good in anyone and had room in her heart for the whole world. As the afternoon progressed, Jonathan found himself opening up about his loneliness, his regrets, and his growing realization that success without meaningful relationships was empty. He was careful to maintain his janitor persona, but he was more honest about his emotions than he had been in years. You know what I like about you, John? Rosa said as they sat on the front porch after dinner. You listen. Really listen. Most people are just waiting for their turn to talk, but you actually care about what other people have to say. I've learned a lot from your daughter, Jonathan said. She's taught me about kindness, about seeing value in everyone. And what have you taught her? Rosa asked with a knowing smile. Jonathan considered this. I hope I've taught her that her instincts are good, that she should trust herself more. She's incredibly wise, but she doesn't always see it. She's been happier these past few weeks, Rosa observed. More confident. That's your influence. I think it's mutual, Jonathan said, watching Melody through the window as she cleaned dishes. She's changed my life in ways she doesn't even know. Have you told her that? Not in so many words, Jonathan admitted. Maybe you should. Good people need to know when they're making a difference. Rosa's voice was gentle but firm. My daughter has a tendency to give and give without realizing how much she's worth. Someone needs to remind her. Later, as Melody walked him to his car, Jonathan felt a heaviness in his chest. The day had been perfect, but it had also deepened his deception. Rosa and Melody had welcomed him into their family, trusting him with their stories and their hearts, while he continued to lie about his fundamental identity. Thank you for today, he said as they reached his car. Your mother is wonderful. She likes you, Melody said. I can tell. She doesn't invite just anyone to stay for dessert and coffee. What about you? Jonathan asked. How do you feel about our friendship? Melody was quiet for a moment, and Jonathan held his breath, wondering if she was beginning to suspect something. I feel like I can be myself with you, she said finally. Completely myself, without pretending or trying to impress anyone. That's rare, John. Most people make me feel like I need to be more or less than I am, but you make me feel like I'm exactly enough. Jonathan felt tears forming in his eyes. You are enough, Melody. You're more than enough. You're extraordinary. So are you, she said softly. I know you think you're just a janitor, but you're not. You're kind, intelligent, thoughtful, and you see people for who they really are. That's a gift. As they said goodnight, Jonathan realized that his feelings for Melody had moved far beyond attraction or admiration. He was genuinely, deeply in love with her, and the thought of losing her when the truth came out was becoming unbearable. The next morning at work, Jonathan found himself looking at everything differently. His undercover investigation was nearly complete. He had enough evidence to expose the corruption and prosecute the criminals. But ending his janitor identity meant ending his relationship with Melody, at least as she knew it. You look thoughtful today, Melody observed as she brought him his morning coffee. Everything okay? Just thinking about life, Jonathan replied. About how quickly things can change. Change can be good, Melody said. Sometimes it's scary, but it can also bring wonderful opportunities. What if the change involves disappointing people you care about? Jonathan asked. Then you trust that the people who truly care about you will understand, Melody said. Real relationships survive truth, John. It's the fake ones that can't handle honesty. Jonathan nodded, but he wasn't convinced. Melody might understand his motivations, but would she forgive the deception? Would she trust him again? And even if she did, how could they build a real relationship when it had started with such a fundamental lie? As the day progressed, Jonathan made his decision. He would complete his investigation, expose the corruption, and then find a way to tell Melody the truth. He owed her that much honesty, even if it meant losing the best thing that had ever happened to him. But first, he had to figure out how to explain that the janitor she had fallen for was actually the millionaire CEO she had never met. The call came on a Wednesday morning, just as Jonathan was beginning his cleaning rounds. He saw Melody's phone ring at the reception desk, watched her face go pale as she listened, and knew immediately that something was terribly wrong. "I'll be right there," Melody said into the phone, her voice shaking. "Tell her I'm coming." Jonathan abandoned his cart and approached her desk, his heart pounding. "Melody, what's wrong?" "It's my mother," Melody said, tears streaming down her face. "She's in the hospital. Her cancer came back and she collapsed at home this morning. The doctors say..." She couldn't finish the sentence. "What can I do? How can I help?" Jonathan asked, his own voice thick with emotion. "I have to go. I have to be with her," Melody said, grabbing her purse with trembling hands. "I need to tell Mr. Thompson that I'm leaving, but I don't know how long I'll be gone, and I can't afford to lose this job, but I can't leave her alone." "Don't worry about work," Jonathan said firmly. "Just go to your mother. Everything else can wait." "But my job..." "We'll be here when you get back," Jonathan promised, though he had no authority to make such guarantees in his janitor role. "Your mother needs you now. That's what matters." Melody looked at him with grateful tears in her eyes. "Thank you, John. I don't know what I'd do without your support." After Melody left, Jonathan spent the rest of the day in a state of anxiety and determination. He couldn't concentrate on his undercover work, couldn't think about anything except Melody and her mother. When his shift ended, he drove straight to the hospital. He found Melody in the waiting room, still in her work clothes, looking small and lost among the sterile chairs and fluorescent lights. "John? What are you doing here?" she asked, looking up with red-rimmed eyes. "I brought you dinner," he said, holding up a bag from her favorite restaurant. "I figured you probably hadn't eaten." I can't afford the hospital cafeteria prices," Melody admitted quietly. "I've been drinking water from the fountain." Jonathan's heart broke. Here was this incredible woman facing her worst nightmare, and she was worried about the cost of a sandwich. "Please eat something. You need to keep your strength up for your mother." As Melody ate, she told him about her mother's condition. The cancer had spread, and the doctors were recommending an aggressive treatment plan that would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. "The insurance will cover some of it," Melody said, "but there's still going to be a huge amount we'll have to pay out of pocket. I've been saving money for college, but I'll have to use all of that and more." "What about payment plans? Financial assistance from the hospital?" Jonathan asked. "I've applied for everything I can think of," Melody said. "But even with help, it's going to be more than I can handle. I might have to sell my car, maybe even my grandmother's house." Jonathan felt a surge of anger at the unfairness of it all. Here was a woman who had spent her life helping others, who had worked hard and saved every penny, and she was being forced to choose between her mother's life and her own financial survival. "There has to be something else," he said. "Some other option." "There is," Melody said quietly. "I could take a second job. Work nights and weekends. I've already started looking into it." "When would you sleep? When would you have time to be with your mother?" "I'll figure it out," Melody said with determination. "I have to. She's all the family I have left." That night, Jonathan lay awake in his mansion, surrounded by luxury while the woman he loved faced an impossible choice. He had the money to solve her problems easily. The cost of her mother's treatment was less than he spent on his car collection. But how could he help without revealing his true identity? The next morning, Jonathan called his personal assistant from his cell phone while hiding in his car. "Patricia, I need you to set up an anonymous charitable donation," he said. "I want to pay for someone's medical expenses." "Of course, Mr. Pierce. What's the amount and the recipient?" "Whatever Rosa Washington's treatment costs at City General Hospital. Everything. I want all her medical bills covered, past and future." "That's very generous, sir," Should I have the donation processed through the Pierce Foundation? No, I want this to be completely anonymous. Set up a shell account, make it look like it's coming from a medical charity. I don't want it traced back to me or the company. I'll handle it discreetly, sir. May I ask what prompted this donation? Jonathan paused, thinking about Melody's tears, her determination to sacrifice everything for her mother. Sometimes good people need help, and they deserve to receive it without having to worry about the cost. That afternoon, Jonathan returned to the hospital to find Melody in the same waiting room chair, now wearing different clothes but looking just as exhausted. How is she? He asked, settling into the chair beside her. Stable but weak. The doctors want to start treatment immediately, but... Melody's voice trailed off. But what? The financial coordinator wants to meet with me tomorrow to discuss payment options. I'm scared, John. I don't know how I'm going to afford this. Jonathan took her hand, wishing he could tell her that everything would be okay, that he had already taken care of everything. Whatever happens, you'll figure it out. You're the strongest person I know. I don't feel strong, Melody said. I feel scared and helpless and angry. Why do good people have to suffer? Why does my mother, who spent her whole life helping others, have to go through this? I don't know, Jonathan said honestly. But I know that she raised an incredible daughter who will do whatever it takes to help her. And I know that you're not alone in this. Thank you for being here, Melody said, squeezing his hand. I don't know what I did to deserve a friend like you. The next day, Jonathan waited anxiously for news from the hospital. He had confirmed that the anonymous donation had been processed, but he didn't know when or how Melody would be told. His phone rang at 2 p.m. John? John, are you there? Melody's voice was breathless with excitement. I'm here. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. Everything's right. The most incredible thing just happened. The hospital called me into the financial office, and they told me that an anonymous donor has paid for all of my mother's medical expenses. Everything, John. Past bills, future treatments, everything. Jonathan felt tears of relief in his eyes. That's wonderful, Melody. That's incredible. I can't believe it. I asked who it was, but they said the donor wanted to remain anonymous. Can you imagine? Someone out there, someone who doesn't even know us, cared enough to help. It's like a miracle. Your mother deserves it, Jonathan said. You both do. I keep thinking about what you said about good people needing help. Maybe this is proof that there are still angels in the world, people who care about others without expecting anything in return. Jonathan closed his eyes, wishing he could tell her that he was her angel, that he would do anything to keep her from suffering. But he also knew that his anonymous help had given her something precious, hope and faith in human kindness. What happens now? He asked. Now my mother gets the best treatment available, and I get to focus on being her daughter instead of worrying about money. I can't believe this is real. That evening, Jonathan visited Melody at the hospital again. She was sitting beside her mother's bed, holding Rosa's hand while Rosa slept peacefully. She looks better already, Jonathan observed. The doctors say the treatment is going well. She's going to beat this, John. I know she is. Melody's voice was filled with hope and determination. Of course she is. She's as strong as her daughter. I've been thinking about what you said, Melody said. About good people deserving help. I want to do something to pay this forward. When my mother is better, I want to find ways to help other families who are going through what we went through. Jonathan felt his heart swell with love and admiration. Even in receiving help, Melody's first thought was about how she could help others. That's a beautiful idea. I was thinking we could start small. Maybe organize fundraisers at work or volunteer at the hospital. Would you help me? I'd be honored to help you, Jonathan said, meaning every word. As they sat in the quiet hospital room, Jonathan realized that his anonymous donation had done more than solve a financial problem. It had given Melody hope, strengthened her faith in humanity, and inspired her to help others. It had also shown him what his wealth could really accomplish when used with love and compassion. But it had also deepened his deception, making him feel even more guilty about the lies he was telling the woman he loved. How could he continue to pretend to be a poor janitor when he had the power to change lives with a single phone call? The truth was becoming more complicated and more necessary with each passing day. The weeks following Rosa Washington's mysterious benefactor's intervention brought a whirlwind of activity and emotion. Jonathan watched Melody transform from a woman burdened by impossible choices into someone radiant with hope and gratitude. Her mother's treatment was progressing well, and the family's financial crisis had been resolved completely. But for Jonathan, the situation was becoming increasingly complex. His anonymous donation had solved one problem while creating another. How could he continue his relationship with Melody when it was built on such a fundamental deception? I still can't believe it, Melody said one morning as she prepared coffee for both of them. Whoever this donor is, they've given my family our lives back. I wish I could thank them properly. I'm sure they know how grateful you are, Jonathan replied, feeling the weight of his secret pressing down on him. Sometimes the best way to thank someone is to pay their kindness forward. That's exactly what I want to do, Melody said, her eyes lighting up with excitement. I've been thinking about this constantly. I want to start a foundation to help other families facing medical crises. Small donations maybe, but enough to make a difference. Jonathan's heart swelled with pride and love. Even when blessed with unexpected help, Melody's first instinct was to help others. That sounds wonderful. How would you get started? I don't really know, Melody admitted. I've never done anything like this before. I'd need to learn about setting up charities, fundraising, maybe even writing grants. It's probably too big a dream for someone like me. Don't say that, Jonathan said firmly. You're one of the most capable people I know. If anyone can make a difference, it's you. You really think so? I know so. And I'll help you however I can. Melody's smile was radiant. Thank you, John. Your faith in me means everything. That afternoon, Jonathan made a decision that would change everything. He called his personal attorney from his car during lunch break. Richard, I need you to set up a legitimate charitable foundation, he said. I want to fund it anonymously, but I want someone else to run it. Another anonymous donation? You're becoming quite the philanthropist, Jonathan. This is different. I want to create something ongoing, something that can help people long term. And I want to offer the executive director position to someone specific. Who did you have in mind? A woman named Melody Washington. She's currently working as a receptionist, but she has the passion and the vision to make this work. I want to offer her a salary that's triple what she's making now, plus benefits and education funding. That's quite generous for someone with no nonprofit experience. She has something more valuable than experience. She has heart. And she understands what it means to need help. I'll draft the paperwork. How do you want to approach her? Jonathan thought about this carefully. Make it look like she was recommended by someone who's seen her work. Maybe someone who was impressed by her dedication to helping others. I'll handle it discreetly. What should we call the foundation? The Second Chance Foundation. Focused on helping families facing medical crises. 2 weeks later, Jonathan was working near Melody's desk when he saw her receive a phone call that would change her life. Yes, this is Melody Washington, she said into the phone. I'm sorry, a foundation? I think you might have the wrong person. Jonathan pretended to clean while listening intently. Someone recommended me? But I don't understand. I've never worked in nonprofit before. Yes, I'll meet with you. Tomorrow at lunch? Thank you. After she hung up, Melody sat staring at the phone with a bewildered expression. Good news? Jonathan asked, approaching her desk. I think so. Maybe. I'm not sure, Melody said, shaking her head. That was someone from something called the Second Chance Foundation. They want to interview me for an executive director position. That's wonderful. What kind of foundation is it? They help families with medical expenses. The weird thing is, they said someone recommended me specifically, but they won't say who. Melody looked puzzled. I can't imagine who would recommend me for something like this. Maybe someone who's seen how much you care about helping others, Jonathan suggested, his heart racing with excitement and nervousness. But I don't have any experience with nonprofits or fundraising or any of that stuff. Maybe they're looking for someone with heart rather than just experience, Jonathan said. You'd be perfect for something like this. The next day, Melody returned from her lunch meeting looking dazed and overwhelmed. How did it go? Jonathan asked. They offered me the job, Melody said, sitting down heavily in her chair. Full-time with a salary that's more than I ever dreamed of making. Plus health benefits, education funding, and a budget to actually help people. That's incredible, Melody. You should be celebrating. I should be, but I keep thinking this has to be some kind of mistake, Melody said, wrapping her arms around herself. Things like this don't happen to people like me. First the anonymous donor for my mother, now this perfect job opportunity. It feels too good to be true. Jonathan felt a pang of guilt, knowing he was responsible for both of these coincidences. Maybe you're just ready for good things to happen. You've worked hard, you care about others, and you deserve success. The foundation director, Mrs. Chen, said they've been looking for someone with genuine compassion rather than just business experience. She said they wanted someone who understands what it's like to need help. Melody shook her head in amazement. She knew about my mother's situation, about the anonymous donation we received. How could she know that? Maybe your story has inspired more people than you realize, Jonathan said carefully. Good news travels fast, especially when it involves good people. They want me to start next Monday. I'd be leaving Pierce Industries. Melody looked around the office, then back at Jonathan. I'd be leaving you. Jonathan's heart clenched. This was what he had wanted, to give Melody the opportunity she deserved, but he hadn't considered how it would feel to lose their daily interactions. You have to take it, he said firmly. This is your chance to make the difference you've always wanted to make. But what about us? What about our friendship? Real friendships survive changes in jobs, Jonathan said, hoping it was true. Besides, maybe this won't be goodbye. Maybe it's just a new beginning. You really think I should take it? I think you'd be crazy not to. This is your calling, Melody. You were meant to help people. That evening, Jonathan sat in his car outside the hospital where Rosa was completing her treatment. He had been visiting regularly, always bringing flowers or food, always maintaining his janitor persona. Tonight he had come to say goodbye, though Rosa didn't know it. John. How wonderful to see you, Rosa said as he entered her room. She was sitting up in bed, looking stronger and healthier than she had in weeks. Melody told me about the job offer. Isn't it amazing? It's perfect for her, Jonathan said, settling into the visitor's chair. She's going to help so many people. I keep thinking about all the blessings we've received lately, Rosa said thoughtfully. The anonymous donor, now this job opportunity. It's like someone is watching over us. Maybe someone is, Jonathan said softly. You know what I think? Rosa leaned forward conspiratorially. I think you're part of the blessing, John. Ever since Melody met you, good things have been happening. You've been like a good luck charm for our family. Jonathan felt tears forming in his eyes. I think it's the other way around. Your daughter has changed my life. She has a gift for that, Rosa said with maternal pride. She sees the best in people and brings it out. But you've been good for her too. She's more confident now, more sure of herself. That's your influence. She was always remarkable. I just helped her see it. That's what love does, Rosa said gently. It helps us see ourselves through kind eyes. Jonathan's heart stopped. Love. Oh, honey, it's written all over your face when you look at her. And hers lights up when she talks about you. You two are in love, even if you haven't said it yet. Jonathan stared at Rosa, wondering how much she had figured out. It's complicated. The best love usually is, Rosa said with a knowing smile. But if two people care about each other and want to build something real together, they can work through any complication. What if one person has been keeping a secret? A big secret that could change everything? Rosa studied his face carefully. Is it the kind of secret that would hurt my daughter? Not intentionally. Never intentionally. But it might. Then you need to tell her, Rosa said firmly. Secrets have a way of growing bigger and more hurtful the longer you keep them. If you love her, trust her with the truth. What if she can't forgive me? Then she's not the woman I raised, Rosa said with confidence. My daughter understands that good people sometimes make mistakes or find themselves in impossible situations. She'll listen to your heart, not just your words. I hope you're right. I am. But John? Don't wait too long. Trust is like a plant, it needs honesty to grow. The next morning, Jonathan arrived at work to find Melody packing her personal items from her desk. She had accepted the foundation position and would be starting immediately. I can't believe this is really happening, she said, carefully wrapping a small plant in tissue paper. 3 weeks ago, I was worried about losing my job if I took too much time off for my mother. Now I'm starting a career that could actually make a difference in the world. You're going to be amazing, Jonathan said, watching her pack away the photos and small mementos that had made her desk feel like home. I'm scared, Melody admitted. What if I'm not good enough? What if I disappoint people? Impossible, Jonathan said firmly. You're the most naturally gifted person I know when it comes to caring for others. Everything else can be learned. As Melody prepared to leave, she turned to Jonathan with tears in her eyes. I'm going to miss you so much. You've been the best part of working here. I'm going to miss you too, Jonathan said, his voice thick with emotion. More than you know. Promise me we'll stay in touch? Promise me this isn't goodbye? I promise, Jonathan said, though he wasn't sure how he could keep that promise without revealing his true identity. Melody hugged him tightly, and Jonathan memorized the feeling of holding her, not knowing when or if he'd have the chance again. Thank you for believing in me, she whispered. Thank you for seeing something in me that I couldn't see in myself. Thank you for showing me what really matters in life, Jonathan replied. As Melody walked out of Pierce Industries for the last time as an employee, Jonathan realized that he had just lost the love of his life while simultaneously giving her the opportunity to fulfill her dreams. It was the most selfless and heartbreaking thing he had ever done. But he also knew that Rosa was right. If he wanted any chance of a real future with Melody, he had to tell her the truth about who he was. The question was whether he would have the courage to risk everything on her capacity for forgiveness. 3 months had passed since Melody left Pierce Industries to run the Second Chance Foundation, and Jonathan's life had become a strange contradiction. Professionally, his undercover investigation had been a complete success. The FBI had arrested 6 executives for embezzlement and corporate espionage, and Jonathan had restructured the entire company with honest, ethical leadership. Pierce Industries was more profitable and employee satisfaction had soared. Personally, however, Jonathan felt lost. He had ended his janitor charade after Melody left, returning to his executive role, but the corner office felt like a prison. He missed their daily conversations, her warm smile, and the way she made him want to be a better person. He had kept track of her progress from afar. The Second Chance Foundation was thriving under her leadership, helping dozens of families navigate medical crises. Melody had proven to be a natural fundraiser and administrator, her genuine passion inspiring donors and volunteers alike. But Jonathan knew he couldn't continue living a lie indefinitely. Rosa's words haunted him. Trust is like a plant, it needs honesty to grow. If he wanted any chance of a real relationship with Melody, he had to tell her the truth. The opportunity came when Melody called him unexpectedly on a Tuesday afternoon. "John? I hope you don't mind me calling. I got your number from the employee directory before I left," she said, her voice bringing an immediate smile to his face. "Of course I don't mind. It's wonderful to hear from you. How are you?" "I'm good. Really good. The foundation is going better than I ever dreamed. But I was calling because I wanted to invite you to something special." "What's that?" "We're having our first annual gala next Saturday night. It's a fundraising event, but it's also a celebration of all the families we've been able to help. I'd love for you to be there." Jonathan's heart raced. A gala meant formal attire, which meant his carefully maintained janitor persona would be impossible to sustain. But it also meant seeing Melody again. "I'd be honored to come," he said. "Wonderful. It's at the Grand Ballroom downtown. 7 o'clock. When, John? It's formal attire. I know that might be expensive for you, so if you need help finding something to wear." "Don't worry about me," Jonathan said quickly. "I'll figure something out." "I can't wait to see you," Melody said warmly. "It feels like forever since we talked." After hanging up, Jonathan sat in his office staring out at the city. This was at the moment when his deception would either end in disaster or transform into something real. There was no way he could attend a formal gala as John the janitor, without raising questions he couldn't answer. He spent the rest of the week planning exactly what he would say and how he would say it. He practiced speeches in his mirror, wrote and rewrote explanations, and consulted with his attorney about the legal implications of his undercover work. Saturday evening found Jonathan standing outside the Grand Ballroom in a perfectly tailored tuxedo, his hands shaking as he prepared to face the woman he loved with the truth about who he really was. The ballroom was elegant and welcoming, filled with well-dressed donors, grateful families and volunteers. Jonathan scanned the room and found Melody at the center of it all, radiant in a simple but elegant black dress, moving gracefully between groups of guests with confident ease. She had transformed. The hesitant receptionist he had known had become a poised, confident leader. Watching her work the room with natural charm and genuine warmth, Jonathan felt immense pride mixed with terror. "Excuse me, are you John?" asked a young man with a clipboard. "Yes," Jonathan replied, his heart pounding. "Ms. Washington asked me to keep an eye out for you. She's just finishing up with some major donors, but she wanted me to make sure you felt welcome. Can I get you a drink?" "That would be great, thank you." As Jonathan waited at the bar, he overheard conversations about Melody's work. Donors spoke glowingly about her passion and effectiveness. Families shared stories of how the foundation had saved them from financial ruin during medical crises. Everyone spoke of Melody with admiration and affection. "John?" Melody's voice called from behind him. "You made it." Jonathan turned around, and for a moment, Melody's expression shifted from joy to confusion as she took in his appearance. The perfectly fitted tuxedo, the expensive watch, the confident posture, none of it matched the humble janitor she thought she knew. "You look..." She paused, studying his face. "Different." We need to talk, Jonathan said gently. Is there somewhere private we can go? Melody's expression grew concerned. Of course. Let me just. Ms. Washington, interrupted a well-dressed woman with a large donation check. I wanted to present this to you personally. One moment, Melody said to Jonathan, then graciously accepted the donation and posed for photos with the donor. Jonathan watched her handle the situation with perfect professionalism, but he could see the questions in her eyes every time she glanced his way. Finally, she led him to a quiet corner of the ballroom, partially hidden by large floral arrangements. John, what's going on? You look like you belong here and I don't understand how. Her voice trailed off as realization began to dawn on her face. My name is John, Jonathan said carefully. But it's not the only name I go by. What do you mean? Jonathan took a deep breath, knowing that the next few minutes would determine the rest of his life. My full name is Jonathan Pierce. I'm the CEO of Pierce Industries. Melody stared at him for a long moment, her face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and finally hurt. You're lying, she said quietly. I'm not. For the past 6 months, I've been working undercover at my own company, trying to identify corruption and theft. I disguised myself as a janitor to see how employees really behaved when they thought no one important was watching. That's impossible. You're John the janitor. You're my friend. You understand what it's like to struggle, to worry about money, to feel invisible. I do understand those things now, Jonathan said urgently. Because you taught me. Because knowing you changed everything about how I see the world. Melody's eyes filled with tears. You've been lying to me this entire time? About my identity, yes. But not about my feelings. Not about caring for you or believing in you or... Stop, Melody said, holding up her hand. Just stop. I need to think. She turned away from him, her hands shaking as she tried to process what he had told her. The anonymous donation for my mother, she said slowly. That was you. Yes. The foundation job. That was you too. Yes, but Melody, you earned that position. You've proven that you're exactly the right person for it. Everything has been a lie, she whispered. Our friendship, our conversations, the way you made me feel like I mattered. That wasn't a lie, Jonathan said desperately. Those feelings were real. Everything I said about caring for you, about admiring you, about learning from you, that was all true. Melody turned back to him, and Jonathan saw that tears were streaming down her face. How could you do this to me? How could you let me trust you, let me care about you, let me fall? She stopped herself, unable to finish the sentence. Let you fall in love with me? Jonathan finished gently. Because I fell in love with you too. Completely, utterly in love with you. Don't, Melody said, backing away from him. Don't you dare say that now. You don't love me. You can't love someone and lie to them for months. I was trying to protect you. And yes, I was protecting myself too, because I was terrified that if you knew who I really was, you'd see me the way everyone else does, as a rich, powerful man who might want something from you. Maybe I would have, Melody said angrily. Maybe I had the right to make that choice for myself instead of having you make it for me. You're right, Jonathan said. You're absolutely right. I was wrong to deceive you and I'm sorry. I'm so incredibly sorry. Melody wiped her tears with the back of her hand. I have to get back to my guests. This is my foundation's biggest night and I can't fall apart now. Melody, please. Can we talk about this later? After the event. I don't know if there's anything left to talk about, she said quietly. I thought I knew you, but I don't know you at all. You do know me, Jonathan said desperately. The man you talked to every morning, the one who listened to your dreams and supported your goals and fell in love with your kindness, that's exactly who I am. The only difference is my bank account. The difference is that you lied to me, Melody said. And I don't know if I can forgive that. As she walked away to rejoin her guests, Jonathan stood alone in the corner, watching the woman he loved return to her work with perfect composure despite the emotional bomb he had just dropped on her life. He had finally told her the truth, but it might have been too late. The question now was whether Melody's capacity for forgiveness was as strong as her capacity for love. The week following the gala was the longest of Jonathan's life. He heard nothing from Melody despite leaving several voicemails apologizing and asking for a chance to explain properly. He threw himself into work, but even his successful company restructuring felt hollow without the possibility of sharing it with the woman who had inspired him to become better. On Friday afternoon, Jonathan made a decision that surprised even him. Instead of sending his driver, he put on his old janitor coveralls and drove to the community center where Melody volunteered, hoping to find her teaching her literacy classes. He found her in a small classroom, patiently helping an elderly Hispanic man sound out words in a children's book. She looked up when he appeared in the doorway, and her expression shifted through surprise, hurt, and something that might have been relief. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said to her students, "we're going to take a short break. Please practice reading the next page and I'll be right back." She followed Jonathan into the hallway, crossing her arms defensively. "What are you doing here? And why are you dressed like?" She gestured at his coveralls. "Like a janitor?" Jonathan finished. "Because that's still who I am, Melody. The clothes don't change the person underneath. Don't they? Because the Jonathan Pierce I've been reading about this week sounds like a very different person from the John the first thought I knew." Jonathan winced. "You've been researching me." "Of course I have. I needed to understand who I'd really been talking to all those months." Melody's voice was cold, professional. $53 million net worth. Owner of a mansion in the hills. Featured in Forbes as one of the city's most eligible bachelors. "You must have thought it was hilarious listening to me worry about paying for coffee." "I never thought it was funny," Jonathan said quietly. "It broke my heart every time you had to choose between helping others and taking care of yourself." "Is that why you swooped in to fix everything? Because you felt sorry for the poor little receptionist?" "No. I helped because I love you and I couldn't stand watching you suffer when I had the power to change things." Melody was quiet for a long moment, studying his face. "Do you know what the worst part is? It's not even the lying, although that hurt. It's that you robbed me of my own choices. You decided what was best for me without ever asking what I wanted." "You're right," Jonathan admitted. "I was so focused on trying to help that I didn't consider how my interference might affect your sense of independence and dignity. My mother always taught me that accepting help gracefully is important, but so is maintaining your self-respect. When I thought the help was coming from strangers, I could accept it as kindness. But knowing it came from someone who was lying to me, it feels like charity born from pity." "It was never pity," Jonathan said urgently. "It was love. It was watching someone extraordinary struggle with problems I could solve easily, and not being able to stand doing nothing." "But you weren't nothing, John. You were my friend. Your support, your belief in me, your encouragement, those things mattered more than any money you could have given me." Jonathan felt a glimmer of hope. She had called him John, not Jonathan. And there was something in her voice that suggested she might be willing to listen. "I know I handled everything wrong," he said. "I should have told you the truth from the beginning, or at least much sooner. I should have asked what you wanted instead of assuming I knew what was best. I should have trusted you to see past my money to who I really am." "Who are you really?" Melody asked. "Because I thought I knew, but now I'm not sure." Jonathan considered the question carefully. "I'm a man who was successful in business but failing at life until you showed me what really mattered. I'm someone who used to think wealth was the measure of worth until you taught me that kindness and character matter more. I'm a person who fell so completely in love with you that I was terrified of losing you if you knew the truth about my circumstances. And now I know that I lost you anyway because I chose fear over honesty. But I also know that the months I spent knowing you were the happiest and most authentic of my life, even though they were built on a lie." Melody leaned against the wall, looking exhausted. "I don't know how to process all of this, John. Everything I thought I knew about us, about myself, about those months we spent together, it all feels different now." "Does it have to?" Jonathan asked. "The conversations we had were real. The feelings were real. The friendship was real. The only thing that was false was my job title." "Your job title is who you are in the world. It's your power, your privilege, your perspective on life. You can't separate those things from your identity." "You're right," Jonathan agreed. "But you changed my perspective. You showed me that my worth isn't measured by my wealth or my title. You helped me understand that the janitor and the CEO are both just roles I play. What matters is the man underneath." "The man underneath lied to me for months." "Yes, he did. And he's asking for forgiveness not because he deserves it, but because he loves you more than he's ever loved anyone, and he wants the chance to build something real with you. Something honest." A child's voice called from the classroom. "Miss Melody? We finished the page." "I have to get back to my students," Melody said. "They're counting on me." "I know. That's one of the things I love about you. You never let people down." Melody paused at the classroom door. "I need time to think about all of this. About what it means, about whether I can trust you again, about whether what we had was real or just an elaborate deception." "Take all the time you need," Jonathan said. "But please know that my feelings for you are the most real thing in my life." As Melody returned to her classroom, Jonathan stood in the hallway listening to her gentle voice encouraging her students. He realized that this might be the last time he saw her, but he also felt a strange peace. He had finally told her the truth, even if it was too late. 3 weeks passed with no word from Melody. Jonathan continued running his company, but he also began making changes that reflected the lessons she had taught him. He instituted profit sharing for all employees, created a generous education assistance program, and established a fund to help workers facing medical emergencies. He also quietly began supporting other organizations like Melody's Foundation, using his wealth to help people the way he wished he had helped her openly and honestly. Then, on a Tuesday morning, his assistant buzzed his intercom. "Mr. Pierce? There's a Melody Washington here to see you. She doesn't have an appointment, but she says it's important." Jonathan's heart stopped. "Send her in immediately." Melody entered his executive office looking professional and composed in a navy blue dress, but Jonathan could see nervousness in her eyes as she took in the expensive furnishings and panoramic city view. "Impressive office," she said. "Very different from the janitor's closet." "The view is better, but I was happier in the closet," Jonathan replied honestly. Melody smiled slightly, and Jonathan felt a spark of hope. "I've been doing a lot of thinking these past few weeks," she said. "About you, about us, about what happened between us. And I talked to my mother. She said something that I couldn't stop thinking about." "What was that?" "She said that love isn't about perfection, it's about forgiveness. And that if I let pride prevent me from giving someone a second chance, I might be throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me." Jonathan held his breath, afraid to hope. "She also said that actions matter more than words, and that your actions, even though they were misguided, showed how much you cared about me and my family. Your mother is very wise." "She is. But I also had to figure out what I thought, not just what she thought." Melody moved closer to his desk. "I realized that I was angry about two different things and I needed to separate them." "What two things?" "I was angry that you lied to me and I was angry that you helped me without telling me. Those are different problems with different solutions." Jonathan nodded, not wanting to interrupt her thought process. "The lying hurt because it made me feel foolish and naive. But I understand why you did it, even if I don't agree with how you handled it. The helping without telling me? That was harder to forgive because it felt like you didn't trust me to handle my own problems." "I didn't trust myself to help you the right way," Jonathan said. "I was afraid that if you knew who I was, you'd see my help as an obligation or a manipulation rather than genuine care." "That's exactly the problem," Melody said. "You made decisions about my feelings without ever asking me what they were. You assumed I would react badly to knowing the truth." "Would you have reacted badly?" Melody considered this carefully. "I don't know. Maybe initially. But I would have appreciated the honesty, and I would have respected you for trusting me with the truth. I know that now. I should have known it then." "The question is," Melody said, moving around the desk to face him directly, "what happens now? Because I didn't come here just to tell you what you did wrong. I came here because I missed you. I missed my friend John, and I wanted to see if he still exists somewhere inside CEO Jonathan Pierce." Jonathan stood up, looking directly into her eyes. "He's right here. He never left. If anything, knowing you made him stronger and more real than he's ever been." "Prove it," Melody said simply. "How?" "I have a proposal for you. A business proposition, if you will." Jonathan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "The Second Chance Foundation needs a major corporate sponsor. Someone who understands our mission and wants to support it long term. I'd like Pierce Industries to be that sponsor." "Done," Jonathan said immediately. "Whatever you need." "I'm not finished," Melody said, holding up her hand. "I want you to be personally involved. Not just writing checks but volunteering. I want you to meet the families we help, to understand their struggles, to see how your support makes a difference in real people's lives. I'd be honored. And I want complete transparency. No more anonymous donations, no more secret help. If we're going to work together, it has to be honest." "Absolutely. There's one more condition," Melody said, stepping closer to him. "Name it." "I want us to start over. Not as boss and employee, not as rich man and poor woman, but as equals who choose to care about each other. I want to get to know the real Jonathan Pierce, and I want him to know the real Melody Washington." "Are you saying you're willing to give us another chance?" "I'm saying I want to find out if there's an us to give a chance to. The foundation partnership will let us work together and see if we can build something real based on honesty and mutual respect." Jonathan felt tears of gratitude in his eyes. "What about trust? How do I earn that back?" "One day at a time," Melody said softly. "One honest conversation at a time. One transparent action at a time. I can do that. I want to do that. Good. Because I've realized something important over these past few weeks. What's that? I don't want a perfect man who never makes mistakes. I want a good man who learns from his mistakes and tries to do better. And despite everything, I think you might be that man. Jonathan reached out tentatively and took her hand. I love you, Melody Washington. The real you, not some fantasy version. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving that I'm worthy of your trust and your love. I love you too, Jonathan Pierce, Melody said, squeezing his hand. And I'm willing to see if we can build something beautiful together, starting with complete honesty. 6 months later, Jonathan stood at the altar of the same community center where Melody taught literacy classes, surrounded by the employees of Pierce Industries, the families helped by the Second Chance Foundation, and the friends they had made through their partnership. Rosa Washington sat in the front row, beaming with pride as her daughter married the man who had proven that love could survive truth, and that second chances could lead to happily ever after. As they exchanged vows, Jonathan reflected on the journey that had brought them here. He had started as a millionaire disguised as a janitor, but he was ending as simply a man in love with an extraordinary woman. And that, he realized, was the most valuable transformation of all. The deception was over. The real love story had just begun.